Hello and welcome to the Bee Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast. I have a fellow Aussie who has not been living in Australia for the past 15 years, currently resides in New York and has been there for the last 2 years. But welcome to the show, Vinay Patankar. I think I got your surname right. You did tell me, and then
Yeah,
very trying to remember what
perfect.
you said.
No, that was great. Hey B, how you doing?
Good, how are you? I love you're a Sydney sider. I'm a Melbourne girl, but it's cool. I kind of thought that I could pick up. I thought I could hear an Aussie accent. I was like, where's the New York? But yeah, so it's cool to connect with.
My accent is fading. All my friends poke fun at me, and it's kind of strange because I know other guys that have been here way longer than me and still have much stronger accents than I do. It's kind of strange how some people lose them faster than others.
Yeah, you can actually hear it actually. But we're not here to talk about that. Let's talk about you, your business, your journey. You're the co-founder and CEO of Process Street. It's been well, it's 8 years young. Let's just say that it's 8 years young. So what's that, 2025? You started it what in 2000 and was it 16, 17? I'm not even getting my math. 17.
Yeah, 16, 17. Yeah.
Yep, yeah. And yeah, so co-founder and CEO of Process Street, and it is a workflow and compliance operations platform that helps teams document, run, and automate recurring processes. We all need that. From onboarding and approvals to audits and compliance. It's used by startups through to enterprise ops teams, and basically Process Street turns playbooks into trackable checklists and conditional workflows. So work happens the same reliable way every time. I'm going to hand it over to you because I think you're going to do a way better job at explaining Process Street. But I do want you to share with us how you came up with Process Street. What were you doing that brought you to come up with this business? I'm sure I've got heaps more questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my kind of story leaving Australia was I actually left to just go travel and I was just doing the backpacking thing and I basically started building like some internet businesses while I was traveling. And it kind of got to a place where I was like, oh, I don't actually need to go home. I'm just gonna keep traveling and I can live off these businesses. And so that was kind of how it started. And that was my, foot into entrepreneurship. And I started with a Shopify store and then kept building out more websites and kind of growing my team. And because I built the business as like a backpacker, basically, traveling around, not really having an office or a fixed location, uh, we had to do a lot of these things online. We had to build out a remote team, and then we had to start solving all these problems of managing a remote team. And I've been running a remote team since 2009, so this is a
Wow.
long time before COVID. And, I just kind of built up this, long frustration list of things that are difficult to, when managing a remote team, right? And this was before Slack even. This was like before Zoom. So, there was a lot of technology that needed to be built to kind of like facilitate. There was a lot of
Yeah.
frustrations to be had, basically, as you could imagine. And yeah, one of the big ones for me is I had a team in India. I was living a lot in Latin America, and so the time zone was very difficult. And that team was usually working while I was sleeping at night, and then I was kind of back in the day. And I found it was very difficult to kind of have visibility and deploy tasks and train and ensure that the process was being followed when the team was, in another time zone operating, when didn't have kind of visibility over what they were doing, throughout their workday. And so I was like, why isn't there software that can kind of like not just tell them what to do, but actually make sure that it's done the right way and the right time and the quality is there and the process is being followed. And so that was the problem. And we really just built Process Street as an internal tool. I mean, I came from I used to work in enterprise in Australia, and my co-founder also used to work like building a lot of tools for the government in Canada. So we had some exposure to kind of what these solutions looked like in the enterprise and in the government. And there were these really, complex, expensive, clunky kind of like process solutions, like, SAP and Oracle and Microsoft have these like products, right? But they weren't accessible for me as like a small business owner that had, a team of 20 people and didn't have an IT team. And so that was kind of the problem we're trying to solve, is how do we give this like process the power to like streamline and automate and systemize your business using software to kind of like small business owners that
Yeah.
didn't have the same level of technical expertise, right? So that was kind of the original thing. I was like, oh, well, I'm one of them. Let's build a product for me first. And then at least if nobody else wants it, at least I have one customer, which is me. So we just built it as an internal tool for that company, and then we started showing it to people and got really good feedback. So we released it out to the market. Um, but we had a little bit of a preamble about this before around strategy, but the interesting thing to that kind of approach to a business is there isn't really a clear vision and strategy, right? It's kind of like a need solving approach, right? Where you kind of like
Yeah.
start with this very small need and then you kind of like iterate that way. And it's like a bottoms up approach to a business versus like a top down, like we're going to go to Mars and then like let's figure out how to do that kind of like top down, right? So the business really kind of has these like organic bottoms up roots of really kind of just trying to solve one small problem, not really knowing,
Where to go?
which market actually cares the most about
Yeah.
processes and what type of companies are willing to pay the most for processes. Like, I don't know, like like, oh, all businesses need processes. Let's just like, surely it's a big market, right? Like, and that was kind of the extent of the strategic approach that we took, right? So we started the business that way. We built it, we launched it, and we started getting a lot of actually great usage. Thousands of customers, SMBs mostly were using the product. Paying for it, not paying much, but paying something. And but the use cases were very diverse,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So when we would go in and we're like, what are people actually using this for? It was like, oh, there's like some HR process over here, there's some finances process over here, some operation stuff over there. There's like every industry that you can imagine. There is no particular use case or industry or persona that's kind of like accounts for more than 12% of the business. So it's kind of like, as we started to scale the business and we raise more money and we have to like deploy marketing dollars, it was like, okay, well, where are we like, what event are we going to attend? That's like a good kind of question to ask around like persona targeting, right? It's like, cool, we can. It's easy to not all businesses have this problem, right? Like horizontal products have this problem. If you're selling, plumbing software or something, you know who your persona is
Yeah,
pretty clear,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
Um, but you know, um, with when you have a horizontal product and you don't have that exact kind of signal on who is the strongest user and why they're using it for, it becomes difficult to deploy marketing dollars on. We did a lot of inbound at the beginning, like SEO, like, oh, you're typing, you're trying to find an HR process or an employee onboarding checklist or something, and that kind of almost um so what's the word? It's like kind of like subsidizes your marketing in a way
Yeah.
where it's like it kind of lets you kind of operate not in the best kind of strategic way, but lets you get by because you can kind of cast this really wide net and then kind of like get whoever kind of comes in. But it kind of exacerbates the problem in that you just continue to build this really kind of horizontal customer base where you're not really, building a strong muscle in any particular vertical against any particular persona, right? So this basically became when we were doing a
Problem.
lot of guerrilla marketing and founder-based sales, this wasn't really much of a problem because we weren't spending money on marketing that much
Yeah.
because it was mostly just time and hustle. But when
Yeah.
it's like, okay, now you got to spend a lot of money on marketing, it's like, all right, well, where are we going to spend it? That question kind of keeps coming back. And so, yeah, we had to go through this big kind of interesting strategic shift towards what we call now a compliance operations platform. Because when we built the product at the beginning, it was like we're a business process management tool, right? That was kind of like the original product. And so, yeah, we could talk a bit about that journey and
No, I'm
transformation as
ready. I've
well. But
got lots
that's
of
kind of the
questions. I'm listening to you
yeah,
talking, but I'm
yeah,
banking up all these questions
yeah.
because I'm like, I'm listening intently, but I'm banking up questions because it's really interesting listening to you and what you're talking about in terms of starting bottom up versus top down. And like you're going into businesses, but you're also looking at your own and the disconnection of all the different aspects of systems, processes within a business. And it's almost like for me, it feels like you had to cast the net wide to be able to then strategically go, all right, well, we've looked at it like horizontally like this. Now how do we connect it all together? And that feels like strategically where you've landed now with your compliance operations platform. And I think, it's interesting because you've answered like when you booked in for the pod, you talked about that. You didn't really understand the importance of what business strategy was. You didn't think clearly about the target customer profile, the market, and the differentiation that we were building towards as a business. You learnt that later on. But part of me feels like it's almost like you had to go that way, didn't you, in a way? Like it's only now in hindsight, it's a good thing that you can go, oh, if only we had strategy first. It's interesting, pre-show we were talking and I was like, a lot of my clients will say, like, can we start here, B? And I'm always like, well, what's your strategy? And it's
Yeah.
almost like a bit of a foreign question sometimes. And I don't think you have to have a strategy locked and loaded, but you did have a strategy in a way, quite simply that
Yeah.
you were a person who had started a business. It was remote. There was no system, no processes. You're like, how the hell does this work? That was almost like your immediate strategy was let's find a process, a system. So it's interesting. I mean that's just my own observation, but I love how your lived experience informed your initial strategy. But it was only through all the experience and all the horizontal acts going across all the different aspects of what
Yeah.
constitutes a process systems operations that you were then able to go, all right, well, this is actually what it is now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's evolution of a business in a way. I don't know. I'd love your thoughts on that.
100%. Yeah, 100% it's evolution. I've definitely seen other businesses skip that part,
Yeah.
right? Just by having a clearer strategy. So we definitely lost cycles, right? By not having that. In that, I've seen other products who have just come in and said, "Oh, we're just going to build this process software for like oil companies,"
Yeah, right.
and they've, done that from the beginning. That was their strategy from the beginning, and that's, like some of those businesses have become, really, really successful because of
Yeah.
picking that strategy. And other ones also have not, right? The thing with business is that there's many ways to skin a cat or many ways up the mountain, as they say, which is part of what makes business fun, right? It's kind of hurts your engineering mind, but there isn't always a right or wrong answer in business, right? You can
No.
see two businesses that compete with each other and they can both be operated in completely different ways and they're both successful, right?
Yeah.
So there isn't like a consistent playbook for business, but yeah, that was the journey that we went through, and it was what we had to do. Maybe if I just picked up a Jim Collins book 5 years earlier, I would have saved some time. But that's kind of that was our journey, right? And it's where we are today.
Do
Yeah.
you regret, like, do
Um,
you have regrets in that regard? Like, do you, like, I mean, is this, I don't know, I guess, is it a question around,
and
do we compare?
regrets is a yeah, regret exactly. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, I do have my comparison Charlie hat on. Regret's probably not the right word, but
No.
did we make mistakes building the business? For sure, right? Like a lot. There are definitely things we could have done that we didn't, there are things that we did where they just didn't get the results that we expected to do. We could have just like not done them and done something else instead and done that 30 times and probably we would, have been more efficient with our time and resources and whatever. But that's very standard, right? For all businesses, you're
Well, yeah, because
constantly
I'm asking
take,
this question.
taking
I'm
bets that
asking,
don't play.
yeah. Yeah, 100%. Because I'm asking this question because I do it all the time myself, right? Where I'm constantly questioning if I hadn't done it this way, and you're looking at other businesses, you're like, why is it looking so seamless, so smooth? But yeah, I think it's a founder, it's an entrepreneurial thing in us all, right? Where where our work, sometimes our hardest, like we critique ourselves so much. Do you know what I mean? Like in terms of when actually everyone's business journey is different, isn't it? Like I think that's
Yeah,
part of
everyone's
this.
everyone's running their own race.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean that's probably a pretty good life metaphor in general as well, right? It's not even
mm,
just about your business, it's about your life. It's like, comparing yourself to your neighbor and then it's like, oh, am I doing as well as them or not, right? And it's a what it's part of the human trap, right? Yeah.
yeah, 100%. So Process Street, so you've hit now, you sounds like you've fully hit your strides and 8 years new, I'll say, or 8 years young. You've got this compliance operations platform.
Yeah.
Have you since then niched right down, or like how does it work now in
Yeah.
terms of, yeah, strategically
Yeah.
where
So
you're taking the business?
it was an interesting journey. So we really, we ran into this problem of like, okay, where do we spend the marketing dollars, right? And to your point, there was a strategy at the beginning. The strategy was sell to SMBs, right? That was kind of like the strategy. And but it wasn't a, thought through strategy, right? It was just kind of like a very back of the napkin,
Yeah.
this is the highest level, what makes sense. We're going to sell to businesses, right? Um, Probably we'll sell to enterprises too one day. That was kind of the strategy. But then you run into this problem again that I come back to is like, okay, well, where are you going to spend your marketing dollars when you have them now, right? Like you want to sponsor an event. You can sponsor 2 events this year. There are 300 or 3,000 events to choose from. How do you choose
Wow.
which two to sponsor, right? This becomes like the problem, right? Where it's like, um, oh, I can go and I can recruit 10 partners this quarter. Which partners am I going to target? Right? Like, am I going to target partners that sell to financial services? Am I going to target, you know what I mean? It's like, surely some are better than others. If I can choose from 1,000 partners and I can only do 10, right? Like this prioritization problem becomes very difficult if you don't have a clear strategy, right? Because you don't know how to make those decisions.
Mm.
And and so, yeah, this kind of became a problem. Like, oh, well, and it also becomes this problem where a lot of channels, then when you're horizontal and you try to invest in them, say you try to like, run Facebook ads or you try to go to an event, but then you go to the event and all your collateral is like horizontal collateral. You're at an HR event, but everything's like, oh, it's like process software. And then they go to your website and it's like, it's process. It's not HR software.
Yeah.
All your conversion rates start to drop, right? So like your clicks go up, your quality score goes down, your conversion rates through the funnels drop, and so your cost for acquisition goes actually up, right? And so you're not kind of like fine tuning your funnel towards any particular persona, which means that you end up paying more to acquire customers across all these channels anyway, because your channels are not optimized for that particular persona, right? So all these kind of problems come up. And so, we realized this was a problem. It was impacting our growth and our ability to market. So like, okay, we need to solve this problem, right? And so we kind of went through this exercise. We did some of these strategy books back there.
Yeah, I love
Um,
your backdrop. I've been looking at it. I'm loving the
like
plants. I'm loving all the different color.
thanks.
Yeah.
It's like playing to win and good to great, probably my two top
Yeah.
recommendations.
Yeah.
And go through this exercise of, figuring out which customers do you actually provide the most value to,
Yeah.
right? And you can look at that from a number of different ways, but there's obvious stuff like which customers retain the most, which customers expand the most. That's a pretty, good place to start. And then you can kind of look at which ones engage the most, like who are doing the most stuff or have the most users or have the most activity in your product. That can be a good metric, but it can also be tricky. And then, but the real one that is the most important is like business impact, right? It's like
Mhm.
how much actual value to the bottom line is your solution driving to this business, right?
Mhm.
And that becomes a bit of a harder question to answer just from looking at the dashboards in your app.
Mhm.
Maybe if your app is like Shopify, you can see how many sales they're doing, and so
Mhm.
you have a better insight into like the impact you're driving, right? But for a lot of products, if you're an HR product or something, you may not know exactly what the impact is because that's kind of measured somewhere else in some other system
Yeah.
outside of your product, right? And so for us, it was really difficult because we were looking through all the different customers and all the different processes that they were running, and there wasn't anything that immediately like stood out. And there was all these different industries and different processes, and they all have their own names and stuff because like real estate has their own process names, and like you
Yeah.
know
Very neat. Yeah.
fund managers have their own like NAV calculation process. You don't know any of that stuff is unless you work in those industries, right? And so we're just like looking at all these processes. We don't even know what all this stuff is. None of the processes say the word compliance on them, because they all say some industry specific. It's like a tenant eviction process or something, right? It doesn't say the word compliance on it. But the reason that you have a process like that in a system that has to be followed and has to be
Is
tracked
fully
that somebody
compliant.
did it is because yeah, because there's a legislative structure
Yeah,
for how you can evict someone, right? Like, and you have to follow that law to keep your real estate license, right? And so there's this kind of like external compliance pressure coming into these processes, but the processes don't say the word compliance, right? So it also wasn't obvious to us that compliance was the main problem that we were solving. And it wasn't actually until like ChatGPT like 3.5 whatever came out. I think it was 3.5 or 4 when we basically just dumped all the processes into AI and then we're like, tell us like what's going on here. And oh, sorry. And then it came back and said, yeah, all of these are compliance related. And we're like, oh. so, so that was like actually like one of our big insights was kind of you know, until we because it was just thousands of customers and processes and we couldn't really like, we weren't able to figure out that thread and that pattern ourselves. And so once we kind of got that insight from AI, we, started going down that path and obviously doing a lot more research about it. And we're like, okay, so the companies that really care about processes are the ones where there is some external pressure, right? There's a standard like an ISO or a SOC 2, or there's an SEC or an FDA kind of like some type of body that's pressuring you to make sure that, or an auditor that's checking you every year to make sure that your processes are accurate and that they're updated and that people are following them and that there's an audit trail and everything that happens. And so some customers that are companies that are not in regulated industries care about that, but they care about it a lot less than the ones that, have some external pressure. And this was like our big insight. And so we then are like, okay, let's go all in on that, right? And so now today we call Process Street a compliance operations platform, and we've actually evolved it from the one core process tool, which was the original Process Street
yeah,
product, to three products today. So we have three products on the platform. So we have a product called Docs, which is a document management system. So that's for like your ISO or SEC compliant documentation. So it has all these like, approval, like, oh, you want to add a new policy in the security folder. The chief security officer has to approve that before you can add the policy in, or you want to make a change to it. The chief security officer has to, approve it, or there are all these like rules around, a new employee joins and they have to sign that they read these policies. So we have all these like signature tracking and acknowledgement, like all the things that are required
yeah,
for you to
yeah.
pass your
Fully,
audit.
absolutely.
Yeah. Um, then we have a product called Docs, which sorry, that Docs is the first product. We have a product called Ops, which is the rebranded original process tool. So that is like our operations product. So that helps you streamline and automate business processes. And then the third product is a product called Cora, Cora, which is our compliance and risk agent. So that's an AI compliance agent that's doing a lot of things that, your compliance team, or it's a co-pilot for your compliance team. So it's monitoring a lot of the external regulations that are changing, like, oh, Trump's signing all these executive orders, like how is that going to impact our business? So it's constantly scanning all the order, the changes that are going on in the regulations, and then it's coming down. It's scanning your internal documentation, it's scanning all your workflows and tasks, and it's saying, hey, these processes have tariffs. You might need to adjust them because like there was an executive order that just changed the tariffs and et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of like
How
a lot of what your
cool.
compliance team is doing. It's like watching external laws and then making sure your business is like following them, right? So it's an agent that's doing that. And then they're all connected together on this platform in fun ways, right? So you can, you have the agent that's monitoring everything. Then you have all your documentation. The agent is like saying, oh, your documentation is out of date. Say your security document needs to be
Yeah,
updated. So the agent will recommend that you update that document. And then the policy can be connected to the workflow. So say you have an employee termination workflow that says, you need to remove somebody's building
yeah,
key within 24 hours of them being terminated. And that's connected to the security policy, right? The chief security officer has said there's a 24-hour requirement. Say that policy changes to 12 hours or something. We can scan all the HR processes and say, hey, you've got this employee termination process that has a 24-hour SLA. That's now we can see the upstream policy has been changed to 12 hours. So you should go and adjust this SLA in the employee termination process, right? So we can kind of connect from the regulation to the documentation all
yeah.
the
It
way
feels
down to
all
the operations. And
interconnected.
that's why it's,
It feels like to
yeah, and that's why it's a compliance operations platform,
I
right?
love
It
it.
connects compliance with operations. Yeah.
I I love it, Vinay, but it feels like listening to your story. Honestly, like. and I regret was the wrong word earlier, but it feels like you're like right on time. Like it's like that, this is where,
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like you were a remote hybrid before it even existed, like back in 2009. You've been on this massive exploration journey. You've lived through it all. You've kind of seen you've had a lived experience where you're like, there's a problem here. We don't have processes. Why can't I connect everything together? And now we're in this almost like this AI revolution, and here you are connecting all the dots together with AI agents, fueling it. All the conversations I've been having, and I'd love your thoughts on this as well, is, like it's no longer just about generative AI. It's like, agentic AI. It's, 2026, we're going to see a lot more orchestration, a lot more conducting and
hmm
orchestration of systems, processes, etc. And the businesses that aren't focusing on that going forward, they're just falling behind more and more behind. So it feels like you've set this up now. You
Totally.
strategically set like it's there. Like not that it wasn't previously. And it's through all the market research and all the kind of pressure testing and like you were just kind of saying, it's a really interesting story actually. I love that I love the journey. It's like for me, it feels like could have
Thank
you done
you.
it any faster? Do you know what I mean? Like I think we all do this, and I think it comes back to us again. I keep saying coming back to that critiquing, and I'm the same. Like I'm only 2 years into my business, but I get inspired by people like you because I'm questioning myself, going, why isn't this doing? Why aren't I doing this faster? Why aren't, you're constantly doubting you. You're asking yourself all these questions, or I should have done this, or I should have done it that way. But I think it's only through our own experimentation, test, learn, fail fast, iterate. Do you know what I mean? That we can then finally land it. Oh, okay, here it is. And look what happened. You threw it into chat. Chat goes, it's compliance. You're like, really? Like, no shit. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Uh,
it's like, oh, how come I couldn't get to that? But that for me, I don't know if you know much about the flow cycle, but that's a struggle. You were in a long, long struggle phase in terms of just heaps and heaps of research. And then finally you release it, you give it to chat, and chat goes, yeah, it's compliance. You're like, ah, okay, off we go. Like it's
yeah.
such a, you know what I mean? It sounds so
Yeah, what do they say?
simple.
Like business is a survival game, right? Like and
100%.
I think it's a roller coaster, and another way to think about it is that like growth comes in like step functions, right? Where it's not this kind of
No, it's not
smooth
linear.
line, right? It's more of this and then it's like a and then and so you kind of go through these periods of stagnation or even like a downtick, right? A correction somewhere. And yeah, I think that's just one of the things that you hear a lot is persistence is kind of the most important skill of an entrepreneur, right? This is like Y Combinator will say, like, if they're going to index for anything, it would be like this perseverance and persistence kind of like trait, right? Because no matter what, you're going to get these periods of downticks or flat periods or difficult like times. And a lot of the time, the businesses are the winner. They're just the ones that survive through that. And they're able to then survive until the next opportunity presents itself and then kind of capitalize on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you guys because you lived through COVID and you had the business through COVID, like was there like given your business was remote, like how did that impact anything in terms of your business model and how you guys in particular, like was that because
Not really.
no, I was gonna say like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, COVID was it didn't like really it wasn't a huge growth spike for our business like Zoom or Slack saw these like giant, spikes. But then other companies saw these giant kind of like crashes, right? If you're in, some physical business or something. For us, it was just a pretty steady, like nothing really changed. Kind of
yeah.
you couldn't really see COVID much on our graphs, right? It was just business as normal for us, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'd love your thoughts on this too. I always say to businesses, you can't have a system without a culture, and you can't have a culture without a system. And it comes back down to processes, right? Like, and especially startups, scaling, SMEs, like, you're just 100 miles an hour trying to do 50 million different things. And I'm always like, and I get people rolling their like eyes rolling at me as if to say, here she goes again. She's on the friggin' process train because it's like, because I know, like I scaled a business to 20 million, over an 11-year period. I know how it works. Like, and you're growing and all of a sudden you're like, shit, I don't have the processes. I don't have anything in place, and it becomes a problem. It becomes a problem in the business, like strategically and how you put it all together. And obviously compliance is a big part of this as well. Like the amount of times that, the processes aren't in place when you're onboarding new staff, etc. That's just an example. Like, what's your view on that? Because I do believe that systems are just as important as culture, and you need both to work together hand in hand, because without systems, a culture can become ultra chaotic, because there's no kind of rigor or operations around the business. And so things can become rogue and vice versa. Like, what's your view on that?
So my view is like you definitely need culture and systems, but I think back to my multiple ways to climb a mountain kind of analogy, I don't think that there's a best practice way to do either of those
Yeah.
necessarily, right? In that, uh, again, you can look at different businesses that compete and they have very different cultures and very different like operating rhythms and ways of going about systemization, right? You might have kind of one that's much more assembly line and one that's much more just in time, right? For example, they're just completely very different businesses. One's kind of more of like a lab that's 3D printing stuff, and one's more of like this kind of old school assembly line. And they have totally different org charts and kind of like types of the team structure is completely different, and with that comes very different culture. Like one might be a much more move fast and innovate and flat kind of structure, and one might be a much more process and systemized structure. Probably the assembly line one will be more like systemized, kind of a processed structured business, but both can be extremely successful companies, right? And both can sell, whatever billions of dollars of whatever product they're creating, right? So it is important because to me, it's kind of like culture is kind of like a religion or something, right? Where it's not like one religion is right, but having a unified set of values helps people kind
Mm.
of collaborate together, right?
Yeah.
In a system that works well. And so it's not so much that like one, religion's values are better than another. It's just by having a set of values of some sort, it helps align and attract that type of person, which then creates a kind of unified, cohesive, like kind of teamwork structure that allows everybody to collaborate in an efficient way and not spend time, bickering and reworking stuff and kind of have more alignment and consistency. So yeah, I think that you need culture and you need processes, but they can be approached in very different ways.
Yeah. Interesting.
And a lot of that will come down to, a lot of that, yeah, again, because like you can build different types of teams, right? You just think like personality types. Like you're going to have a really like sales heavy, say, put like culture, right? Where very extroverted, super outgoing. Everyone's just like bashing down the door. The main KPIs are number of dials and number of, meetings. And then you could have like a much more technical product kind of like organized culture, which is like way more about like, everyone's introverts and everyone's like builders, and the KPIs around product releases and like making sure that we build the best product and sell technically, right? And both of those businesses can make heaps of money, right? And they can attract completely different people. They're going to have a completely different operating rhythm. They're going to have a completely different culture and probably very different processes. One will be all about sales training, and the other will be about like engineer onboarding, right? But they can both be very successful businesses, right? So yes, I think they are required, but there isn't like a prescriptive way to
Yeah.
do it. Yeah.
Good call out. Random question. Two more questions go. Random question. I'm super structured, but I am very linear, non-linear, I should say. Like, it's I'll go here, but I'm very structured, and I like systems and processes and things like that. But when it comes to my personal life, I'm completely the opposite, and it spins people out. Like, it actually spins people out who have seen me in work, and then they're like, "Whoa!" Like when it comes to personal life. given that you work in, like in compliance operations, all of that, is are you a complete like are you is that you in terms of in life, in leadership and business, or like are you that sort of a person, or are you
Yeah.
yeah.
I so I would say that I wasn't as big of a systems person when I was young. It's something that has been like developed over the course of not just building this business, but even building my previous businesses as well. And it comes down to just necessity, right? Like once you're an entrepreneur, especially if you're a small business owner and you're bootstrapping at the beginning, you just have no time, right? Like you have 400 hours of work to do every week and you have 40 hours. So it's like, what are you going to do, right? Like it's like if I want to just even make a dent into this at all, I need to figure out every way to get like as much time back as possible. And that's
Yeah.
both in the business and at home, right? Because I just need to carve out more time because I have 400 hours of stuff I need to do this week. I'm only going to get 100 of it done, right? But even to get that 100 done, I
Mm.
still need to kind of like not have to spend time on lots of other things, right? Um, and so, yeah, it starts in the business with like, usually when you're building a team, right? So it starts once you start having team members and you're like, well, if I have to spend all my time managing these people, then I can't actually do any work
No,
myself. And what's the point in
exactly.
hiring these people? So you're like, okay, I need to build systems so they can operate independently without me. So then that actually makes sense for me to hire someone because if otherwise, what's the point? And then then a lot of it's common if you see like a lot of founders that they'll kind of start shifting this into their personal life. It's like, oh, how can I get time back for my personal life? How can I not cook and get an assistant and automate my house and automate my
Outsource, yeah.
finances and whatever, right? Like, so it becomes kind of the same thing once you're, you know this well, once you're running a business, a business is like a child, right? It's like when it's got to eat, it's got to eat. And it's like there's nothing, it
No,
doesn't matter if
exactly.
you're not feeling well or if you don't have time, right? Like it's irrelevant. It still needs to eat or it's going to die, right? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it becomes a kind of like a forcing function for a lot of entrepreneurs to kind of start thinking to become more of a systems builder because it's the only way that you can really
Yeah, I love
survive a lot of the time.
Yeah, I do
Um,
love building systems. And when I say I'm outside of work, I mean more just, I just like, I let other people organize stuff. Like, I'm like, oh, you organize the get together or you organize catching up, like, versus me having to organize all that stuff. And that's probably just me
right.
delegating, right?
Well,
Going,
that's yeah.
I'll leave
I,
that to you because I've got enough on my plate to worry about. So, like,
I would actually classify that a little bit different. I'll classify that more as like project management than I would as building systems. So we kind of like separate, process and project management, right? So it's like,
yeah,
oh, let's organize this plan, this trip together. I'd call that a project. I'm not into projects. Um, because to me, like a project is not, it's not something that's going to save, get time off your plate in some way, right? For me, it's like, okay, how can I build a system so that I'm not doing this financial task every month,
yeah,
right? And
100%.
so that then I build that system, I build that automation, and now that no longer is a thing I have to do every month, right? And
Yeah,
so I'm only doing that one project because I know that it's going to save me time, right, for the rest of the months versus just adding a project that's just going to I'm going to do a trip and then it's over and then like I didn't really, gain anything back from that from a productivity perspective afterwards. Not like I actually do plan trips and stuff with my friends. I'm not saying that it's like a thing you shouldn't do, but
I get
I
it.
put it in a different
I
bucket
hear you.
to processes. Yeah,
Yeah, I hear you. What would be,
yeah.
last question, what would be one piece of advice you would give a business that had multiple disconnections within the organization, whether they were startup, whether they were more established, they were scaling, and they didn't even know they needed, like, let's just call it a compliance operations platform and your three products. What would you And that, but they were like they were up in arms. Like it was like, it was just keeping them awake at night. They didn't know where to start, what to do. What would be one piece of advice you would give them?
Yeah. So there's kind of two personas here, right? You've got the compliance persona, which is like you're in a regulated industry. They know that they need compliance. You can't get your license. You can't operate. You can't, you can't function. You're like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor without getting a license. It's like, no, you're not, you know? So they know that they need compliance, right? So that's usually not the case. And they usually are dealing with compliance at a very early stage, right? If you're, you know, a fund manager or something, you're basically when you're creating the business, you're thinking about compliance from the beginning. In terms of the second kind of business that maybe not so heavily regulated, but is kind of more having these process and systems problems, that's usually going to be, well, not usually. There are going to be situations where just the business is, I guess, not worked on its systems much or ever. And it's just, I guess, an owner has been kind of keeping it afloat very manually for a long period of time. Or there's going to be businesses that are growing and they're growing out of their current
Mm.
like systems, right? Um, for the person that's really struggling and to just kind of like keep the lights on, I think that's a really good indicator that you need to look at building processes, right? If you're just working weekends every week and you're constantly underwater and constantly like struggling, um, it's probably a process problem, especially if you're not in a hyper growth business. If you're in a hyper growth business, most of the playbooks get like thrown out, and it's really just do whatever you can do to keep the business growing. And unfortunately, you're going to have a lot of systems problems. Your systems are probably going to need to be upgraded every at least doubling of revenue, let's say. So as you go from two to four and then four to eight, you're probably going to need to be at least
Yeah,
not
there you
replacing
go.
necessarily every
Yeah.
system, but doing a big kind of
Yeah.
like just a big observation at how your systems change. Like Sheryl Sandberg has a good story about this. She was the one of
Thanks.
the execs at Google and Facebook and stuff. Yeah. And she was like, at the beginning, whenever there was a birthday, we did like a cake, right, for employee. And then it got to like 350 employees. So it's like, all right, well, there's a birthday every day, right? And then it gets to like 3,000 employees. It's like, all right, well, there's 10 birthdays every day. It's like we can't do 10 cakes every day, right? And so at some point, the system breaks. And so you need to redesign the system because like growth like breaks your system in some way, right? And so, that's a good problem to have, but also if you hear the people that are on a growth journey like that, it's just like chaos, right? Like everything is just breaking and you usually don't have the luxury to kind of design these really tight systems. So I'd really just focus on growth. Maybe think about what are the top two or three most critical, most important,
High
most
value.
um high value and also long lasting processes that you're
Yeah.
gonna that they're gonna be in your business. Like compliance is a good example, but it's like things that are probably not going to change, right?
Yeah.
Very often, try to kind of bake those in early on. But a lot of your core processes like your sales and your HR and your customer stuff, that's going to change rapidly as you scale as a business. So it really just becomes this constant higher ops people, would be my
Yeah, I
would
agree.
be
I
my
agree.
recommendation, right? Like
Yeah. And what
higher
comes
ops people
up,
because it's a living thing. It's like it's constantly changing. It's not like I'm gonna build this process once and it's gonna be done. It's like no, every day you're gonna have these tweaks and iterations. And so you really do need people that are dedicated to building those systems while the the business is growing. Yeah.
could not agree more. And what comes up for me is organize that chaos. Organize the chaos because the chaos will always be there as you're scaling and as you're growing and building. And yeah, so how do you organize it? Pick those three things. Like I could not agree more. The cake thing, I love that analogy. But what we did is we used to do daily cake. We used to do daily cakes as well, and then we got too big, so then we ended up doing monthly. And we'd just do
Yeah.
celebrate the month, and we'd have a cake. We'd have for all the birthdays in August, for example. It was like it's August. Let's celebrate everyone's birthdays in August. I've worked a treat. I think you just got to continue to iterate,
Yeah.
right? Test and test, test and learn, test and learn. Vinay, how do we find out more about Process Street? How do we find out more about you and all your amazing insights? Yeah, how do we find out more?
Yeah. Well, Process Street, you can just go to our website,
I know, I love it.
process.st. And yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn mostly. So I'm Vinay Patankar on LinkedIn.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. I love the brand name too, Process Street. I didn't get to ask you how you came about that name, but I do like it. It's very yeah, it's cool. It's just a streets
Thank
process. I
you.
should say it's just a street, but you know what I mean? It's just got yeah, I like it. There's something about the
Yeah, it's
yeah.
very, very ordered.
Yeah, it's really ordered, but it's really got progressive in a way, like, because the street can take you on very a lot of different paths.
That's
you know?
true. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I'm going to let you get to your day. It was great to connect with you. Thank you so much. I've really
Yeah, you as
enjoyed
well.
listening to process operations, compliance, your journey. Like, what a story. And no doubt you have big ambitions ahead with the where you're
Oh
taking
yeah.
strategy next. So I look forward to seeing it take off in its next flight. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, this has been so fun. Thank you, B.
Yeah, no, thank you. Have a good day.